Wow, what a question to start with. How do you answer the question of who are you? And that's actually a really relevant question in terms of what the book's about. How do we answer that question? Who are you? So I'm going to swerve that one, if you'll bear with me, and I promise I will come back to it. And I'm going to just answer the second part of that question, which is, and what do you do? So I have done many things throughout my career. I'm working as an organisational leadership consultant right now, but I think the most relevant answer to that question in terms of why we're here is I was a psychotherapist for 15 years until 2019. I had a private practice and I worked with a lot of organisations as their kind of in-house counsellor, if you like, and that experience is what's inspired The Wrong Story. So The Wrong Story is set in the therapy room, and it's not the characters are fictional, the clients are fictional, but it's kind of inspired by that work. My latest book, as I say, is called The Wrong Story. So I come back to the first part of the question now. So it's called The Wrong Story because it's based on the idea that we all have these stories, these narratives, if you like, about who we are, and that it's based on conclusions we came to when we were very, very young. And this is part of the work of therapy, is understanding. So those stories become self-beliefs about the kind of person we are, and often we come to the wrong conclusions simply because we come to those conclusions when we're just too young to interpret the events that form us. So we come to the wrong conclusions. We do it while we're still egocentric. We do it while our brains are far from fully formed, before our brains are anywhere near up to a task that big of interpreting events. So if I give you a classic example, a child whose main caregiver is, for whatever reason, emotionally unavailable. Maybe they're an addict, maybe they're hugely stressed at work, maybe they're going through some relationship difficulties, maybe they were parented really, really badly, or that parenting left something to be desired. For whatever reason, this caregiver is totally undemonstrative and never shows the child any kind of love or affection. That child might conclude, I'm unlovable. That's the egocentricity coming into play. And as an adult, we can see that that's probably the wrong conclusion. It's more about the caregiver than it is about the child. But we form these conclusions, and then we carry those conclusions with us for life. It is fiction, that was an important part of it for me too. I wanted, a certain type of person is going to pick up a book that's about therapy, a non-fiction book that's about therapy or about self-development or about reflection. And I wanted to reach a wider audience than that. I wanted to write, first of all, a compelling storyline that gripped people, that made people keep turning the page, with characters that were relatable, that they were really invested in. Because if you don't want to keep turning the page, any underlying message is going to be pointless anyway. It's irrelevant unless people want to read it. So first and foremost, I hope it's a compelling story. It was also inspired by the clients that I met. So when I was working as a therapist, you meet people socially and they ask what you do, and I would tell them, and there was a huge fascination. Once people got over, oh, are you going to analyse me? Once we got over that bit, and by the way, no, we don't. Not even in the room, actually, not even in the therapy session. That's not how it works. Once we got over that, there was this massive fascination in well, how does therapy work? So I wanted to show that through the book. But I couldn't actually talk about what I did because, of course, it's confidential. I couldn't talk about the amazing people that I met, as the clients that with heartrending stories and huge, dramas and tragedies that had happened to them that I would hear, and I would think, how are you still standing? How are you still putting one foot in front of the other? How did you manage to get out of bed in the morning and drag yourself to my office? There's I have huge respect and admiration for the people that want to turn their life around or just want something more enough that gets them to the therapy room, because that's quite a brave thing to do. I think that's a very brave thing to do, is go and tell a complete stranger what's going on inside, what's going on in here and in here. I think I have huge admiration and respect for them, and I met some amazing people, and they inspired the story. So let me tell you about a few of the main characters. So the therapist is called Maggie, and I guess Maggie's a little bit based on me. So we follow Maggie through, without giving too much away, through 25 years of her career, and first meet her when she's newly qualified and very unsure of herself, and then later on she kind of relaxes into the role, Maggie's journey in terms of her professional development was a really important mechanism for me to explain how therapy works. So as she grapples with what it means to be a therapist, the reader learns about that too. They learn about what her intentions are, what she's meant to be doing. She gets it wrong and she swears a lot in her head, I should say, not out loud. And that's a really important vehicle for explaining the therapeutic process. Then we have our first client we meet is called Robin, with a Y, female, Robin. And Robin is at the very early stages of potentially an abusive relationship. So she's very much in love. The relationship's been fantastic up until now, and he's just hit her. And it kind of feels out of the blue, but as we get underneath it, there was some stuff going on that wasn't healthy anyway. And I wanted Robin to be. So she was inspired by many victims of abuse, male and female, by the way, that I met as clients. And I really wanted, through Robin, I wanted to show that it's not black and white. It's not easy to make the decision to leave. It's not this is a terrible relationship, I need to get out. There is a mixture of abusive stuff that should not, is nowhere, just not excusable in a relationship, but there's good stuff as well, which means if she chooses to leave, there'll be a loss. And I think it was that bit that I wanted to really kind of get over. It's complex. The emotions involved are complex. Without saying, I think people should stay in the relationships, by the way. Important point to make. That's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is it's complicated, and we should be a little bit more understanding of the fact that it's complicated. The next character we meet is Stephen, who has amnesia. I also had amnesia as a child. I had a head injury. I had transient global amnesia, so transient is the important bit in that sentence. So I got over it and got my memory back. Stephen doesn't. And Stephen was actually inspired by the true story of Alex Lewis. So Alex and Marcus Lewis were twins, and Alex had a really terrible motorbike accident and had amnesia. And the title of the book they wrote together with a ghostwriter, because both men had dyslexia. So they wrote it with a ghostwriter. I think it's been made into a film. And the title of the book is Tell Me Who I Am. And I think that this book really kind of made me question this link between memory and identity, and how who we think we are comes from like a accumulation of stuff that happens to us. So, you know, if you have lots and lots of memories of not wanting to put your hand up in school, or kind of being a bit of a wallflower at social events and finding it difficult to speak, you might conclude that you're a shy person. If you have no memory of doing those things, no cumulative memory of doing those things, what does that do about your sense of identity? And this is what Alex Lewis struggled with, was I have no memory, so I don't know who I am, but I have a twin brother who went through the same experience as me, so he can tell me who I am. And he was pestering Marcus to tell him about their childhood. And the problem for Marcus was their childhood was horrifically abusive. And, you know, for him it would be amazing to be able to forget. So he had this huge dilemma of, well, do I tell Alex about what happened to us? You know, if you don't remember a trauma, what impact does it have? So Alex Lewis inspired the character Stephen, and I just want to say, coming back to the wrong story and the conclusion thing and the self-beliefs that we carry, there was one bit of that story that really stuck with me, and that was, so as I said, both boys had dyslexia, but after the accident, Alex's level of functioning improved. He still had dyslexia, but it wasn't quite as bad as Marcus's, whereas they've been about the same. And the conclusion that the boys came to, the boys, they were 18 when he had the accident, so on the cusp. The conclusion that they came to was that what had changed for Alex was that he'd lost the memory of being called stupid at school, because we're going back decades, and that was common with kids with dyslexia. You were stupid. And without that self-belief that he was stupid, he wasn't carrying that anymore. So he was kind of freed from that element of it. He still had, you know, at its core, he still had a dyslexia, but he didn't believe he was stupid, and so his level of functioning improved. And I think that's a really good example of how our self-beliefs become self-fulfilling. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's kind of what I wanted to explore. And the last character is Julian. He's taking his childhood abuser to court decades after the abuse. And Julian's character is kind of, he didn't like his story, so he lied. Basically, he made up a different story about his childhood and pretended to be somebody different for several decades. And it's kind of exploring this. Are you who you believe you are? So he believed he was bad because that's how he'd interpreted the abuse that he suffered. It must be my fault. I must be bad. But he pretended to be somebody else. So, and he kind of became that person. I guess the question is, was he ever really bad? Of course not. But he certainly became who he pretended to be. So Julian, as a character, as a person, he reminded me a lot of firefighters that I worked with. So Julian doesn't want to be in therapy. He's kind of told he has to go by the police because they want him to be okay to be this witness in a court case. But he doesn't want to be there, and he's a bit of a rough diamond, we say. It reminds me of a firefighter who once said, I didn't want to go to therapy, he said. I thought I'd have to sit on beanbags and listen to whale music and stuff, and it's not like that at all. And Julian's character is exactly like that. He kind of doesn't get it. He goes along with it, and he says, like many firemen said to me, I don't understand. We're just talking, and I feel better. I don't. How does that work? I don't get it, but I'll go with it. So Julian's in a way is a tribute to them. Wow, I love everything about writing. I love yeah, I love crafting sentences. I love choosing the right words. This is true for even writing an email, by the way. It's not when I'm just writing a book or an article or a blog. I just love the whole process of writing. So writing for me is, sports people talk about being in flow, where everything just comes together, and you kind of you lose track of. I lose track of time. I lose track of. I forget to eat and drink. My husband is always bringing me a fresh cup of tea because I've let it go cold. The fire goes out. The dogs need. Where did that day go? That I love everything about it. I love it, and that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book for me. I didn't write the book for anybody else. It's the fact that we're here with a published book is a whole different story. I didn't really write thinking about the reader originally. I wrote thinking about what I wanted to say for me. I think you have to think about why you want to write a book. I think you have to answer that question first. If you want to write a book and get it published, I think it's a very different process to the process that I actually went through, because that wasn't top of mind for me. I guess if that is your prime aim, is having a published book, then you need to go on creative writing courses, and you need to look at other books in your genre that sell really well, and you need to work out what's the formula of the ones that sell really well. I didn't want to do that. So I did it in two very separate stages. I wrote the book just for the satisfaction of having written a book. So I actually wrote the book a long time ago, probably 8 years ago now, and I finished the book. I was encouraged by two very close friends of mine who really push me and challenge and support me, but they're great. And I wrote the book, and it was 80,000 words. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It took me about 2 years, I think. It had a story that flowed. It had a structure. I was really proud of it. And I for some reason that was enough, because writing a book and getting a book published are two very different processes. They're very different pieces of work. They're very different skill sets. So, as I say, I love writing. So I wrote it from that place, really. And it sat in an attic for 5 years. Literally, nobody read it, not even my husband. Nobody. And then, long story short, somebody persuaded me to let them read it, and then a couple more read it, and then a couple more, and then I ended up with this group of beta readers, and this I think it was about 11 people in the end who were all pushing me and saying, you've got to get this published. So I started that long process of getting to this point. But I did it for me. I did it separately, and so I would my way, and the way I would recommend to people is write for you, and I read something by a literary agent actually, read something by this top literary agent, and she said write the book that moves you. Your writing should move you as you're writing it, and there are bits in this book that a lot of the beta readers, as I now know they're called, I didn't know that at the time, a lot of the beta readers it said to me it made them cry. There are bits in this book that still make me cry, even though I wrote it, and even though I've read it so many times while editing and going through that, been edited so many times. There are bits that still move me, and I think that's important. I think art, in whatever form, should move us. So Sheila Crowley, the literary agent, I think has a really important point. So write the book that moves you. Very important point. So it's available now, and you can get it from all major retailers, so Amazon, Waterstones online, Barnes & Noble if you're in America, Foyles. You can also just go into your local bookstore. I'm a big supporter of local bookstores, and their wholesaler will have it. So go in and ask for it. Go into your local bookshop and ask for it there, because then you're supporting me, but you're also, I think, really, really importantly, supporting local bookshops, and I think that's something I'm also quite passionate about. So that's me. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I hope I've piqued your interest in terms of the book. I'd love to hear what you think of it if you do read it. If you pop me a review on Amazon or Goodreads, or contact me directly via my website. It's ljjenner-author.co.uk. And it's got a little page on there where you can contact me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Bye.